In this video, we're going to wrap up the Notes application by wiring up the final command, the read command. Now, before we get to that, there is one thing I want to talk about related to how we're using the array filter method in Notes.js. Now, in add note, we use the filter method right here to help us track down any potential duplicates, and in remove note, we use filter to just keep the notes we want to keep. Now, we're not going to make any changes to how we use filter in remove note, but I do want to talk about how we're using it in add note and how this code could be improved. The filter method, as we know, looks through every single item in your array, in this case the notes array, and it runs the function for each item, determining whether or not that item should be copied over to the new array you're creating, in this case duplicate notes. Now the problem here is that filter is going to look through every single array item from beginning to end regardless of what happens along the way. So let's say we have 1,000 notes we're looking through and we find a duplicate. Let's say it's number 89. It would be nice to be able to stop right there, but filter doesn't do that. It would still look through the other 911 trying to find other duplicates, which we know it's not going to, since the whole point of this code is to prevent duplicates from getting into the data in the first place. So it would be nice to be able to stop the process once we find a duplicate that is enough information to know whether or not the new note should be added by running this code, or whether we should show them an error saying there is indeed a duplicate. Now to actually get this done, we're going to use a new array method that is the find method, and you'll also be using that for your challenge in this video to wire up the read command. I'm going to start by creating a new variable called duplicate note singular. So filter returns an array of matches. The find method returns the first match it finds, if any. Otherwise, it'll return undefined. Right here, we are going to set its value equal to, and we're going to call notes dot. It is still an array method. The method itself is called find. Now we pass to it the criteria for determining a match, and that is exactly the same as what we used up above. The only difference is that we're going to stop when we find the first match. So right here, we are going to get in an argument. This function is going to be called for every item until a match is found. If no match is found, every item will be searched through. And right here, we're looking at the notes title property, trying to see if it equals the title argument from up above. So this function right here is identical to the one we have right here. Now we can use duplicate note instead of duplicate notes to determine whether or not we should run this code right here or the error code down below. Let's go ahead and kick things off by wiping the if condition. In here, we're going to reference the duplicate note variable, the new variable we just created. Now this actually has the opposite effect of what we want. If there is a duplicate note, we are adding the new note on. If there is no duplicate, we're printing an error. We want it the other way around. And we can use the logical not operator to flip the value from true to false or from false to true right here. Now, if there is no duplicate note, we are going to run this code, adding it. If there is a duplicate note, we'll run the error down below. So this would be one way you could set up the condition. You could also check if duplicate note is equal to undefined. That would work as well, as the find method will return undefined if you don't find a match. So this would read, if there is no match, add the note, otherwise print the error. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the shorter version I had right here, using the logical not operator and referencing our variable. Now we can actually remove the duplicate notes line altogether, as it's no longer being used, and there we go. We have a slightly more efficient version of the add note function. Now you're going to go ahead and wire up the read command on your own. I've got some challenge comments for this one, and I'll paste them right up above in the notes.js file. So the goal is to wire up that read command. First up, we have to set up the title option for the read command. So we have to configure Args to take in a title. That's how we're going to find the note to read. And then you're going to create a read note function in this file, notes.js. You want to search for the note by the title provided, so that'll have to be accepted as an argument. And you're going to find the note and print the title in a styled fashion and the body in just a plain unstyled fashion. Now, if no note is found, you can print an error message in red saying something like unable to find note. Next up, make sure the command handler actually calls the new function you've created, and then finally test your work. try to read one of the notes in your JSON file and make sure you see its body printing. Then try to read a note that doesn't exist and make sure you see that error message. Take as much time as you need to knock this one out. When you're done, come back and click play. How'd that go? Let's start with step 1. I'm going to set up the title option for the command. Over in app.js, near the bottom of my file, I have the read command, and all we have to do is set up that builder object. So a builder property, whose value is an object, and inside of there, the only option we need is title, so I'll set that property up, and we're going to set up the 3 options we've set up for all of our options. We're going to set up describe, demand option, and type. So first up, describe. We can pick whatever we want for this. I've used note title in the past for some of our other similar options, so I'll use the same thing here. Then for the read command, we do want to make sure a title is provided, otherwise we won't be able to read an individual note. So right here, demand option is indeed going to be true, and I'm going to set type equal to the string. Now that we have this in place, we are all done with step 1, and we can move on to step 2, which is to actually create the function over in this file. So I'm going to do just that, and I'll stick it down below list notes. So right here, a brand new constant called read note. And as mentioned, this one is going to need to take in a single argument. So I'll set up my arrow function, and I will accept the title, and that's how I'm going to figure out which note to actually fetch and print. Now from here, we can go ahead and make sure this is exported down below, alongside of our other exports, read note, whose value comes from the read note function defined up above. Now we can go back to the function and actually fill it out. Now the first thing we're going to do is get all of the notes so we can actually look through them, similar to what we've done in some of the other methods. So right here, I'm going to create a const called notes, and in this case, I am indeed going to load those notes in. Now, once I load those notes in, we're going to go ahead and start to search for the one we're looking for. So I can create a const note, which would store the match or undefined if no match was found. And this is where you needed to use the find array method. So notes.find, we are looking for a match. We're going to set up a function that gets called one time for every item in the array until a match is found. Right here, the individual item can be called note. And I'm going to use the arrow function shorthand to return true, saying we've found a match when note.title equals the title argument. So now we have this note variable, and it might contain an object or it might not. The next thing we're going to do is add some conditional logic so we can knock out the rest of step 2, which is to print the note information if we found it. Otherwise, print an error message in red, and we're going to knock that out with an if statement right here. So we'll have an if statement with our condition and a code block, and we'll also have our else clause allowing us to handle both of those cases. In the condition, we're going to reference the note variable. So if there is a note, we'll print it. Otherwise, we'll print our error. Let's go ahead and wire up those console.log calls. Right here, we're going to print the title styled. So console.log, I'm going to use chalk.inverse to have a gray background right here, passing to it the note title. That's note.title. Excellent. Next up, we can print the body of the note as standard old text. So console.log, passing in note.body would get the job done. From there, we can wire up the else clause. In this case, we want to go ahead and print an error saying no note was found. So we'll do just that. Console.log. I'll use chalk once again. I'll use red.inverse to print it with a red background. And right here, we're going to say something like note not found. Excellent. Now that we have this in place, the last thing to do before we test our work is to make sure that read note actually gets called when someone uses the command read. So over here, we have to get argv, where we can access the title, and we have to call the read note function. That would be notes.readNote, passing in argv.title. Now that we have this in place, we can actually test things out, making sure our functionality works as expected. I'm going to remove the challenge comments up top, make sure all of the source files are indeed saved, and we're going to go ahead and run the read command. Now I have a couple of notes over here, though the only one with a body is this first one, so that's the one I'll try to read. Node app.js read, passing in right here a title value equal to the letter T. I'm going to fire that command off, and what do I get? I get the title styled, and I get the body in plain text. Now let's go ahead and rerun the same command, but swap out the title T for a title that does not exist, like shopping list. If I run that, and right here we have our note not found message. So that's where we're going to stop for this video, and that's where we're going to stop for this section. In the last two sections, we used the notes application to explore a lot of fundamental topics like the node module system, NPM, the file system, JSON, command line arguments, and more, all of which we're going to use extensively throughout the rest of the class as we build out backends, connect to databases, and create real-time applications. Now over in Notes.js, before we wrap up, there is a function up top called getNotes. We actually created this much earlier in the class, but at that time we didn't wire it up. We've already created functions for everything we need, so that function getNotes can be removed if you still have it in place. Down below, we can remove it from the exports as well. Now, it was never used in app.js, so there's no need to make any code changes in there. That's where we're going to stop for this one. In the next section, we're going to take a quick moment to talk about how we can debug our Node applications. So when we make typos or get stuck, we can get back on track and fix our code quickly. I'm excited to get to that, so I'll see you in the next one.